Hello, everybody. Welcome to the closing session of the Retail and Consumer Goods Summit. I'd like to give a nod to a fun day of content, so thanks for joining us earlier today. This closing session is live, coming to you from the Google New York City office. Our goal is for this to be a conversation with you, the audience, so please engage right here on our streaming platform. Please use the interactive tools we have for the session, so fire off those emojis and watch out for the polls that we'll be launching. Later, I'll be walking us through a live demo of Looker, so a quick reminder to fill out the survey that's available in the chat right now, if you haven't already. We'll explore in Looker how you and your peers are thinking about shifting trends in the retail industry. So, as you're filling out that survey, I'd like to now switch gears and kick off our fireside chat with Ryan Mason from Constellation Brands. How are you today, Ryan?
Good, thanks. How are you?
Doing quite well. So, Ryan, why don't you tell us about Constellation Brands and your role there?
Sure. So Constellation Brands is a Fortune 500 supplier, producer, and marketer of household brand names in the alcohol space. So a couple things in beer being Corona, Modelo, Pacifico. We've also produced Svedka in the spirits category, High West Whiskey, and a handful of wine and spirits brands out from the West Coast, including Robert Mondavi, Kim Crawford, the Prisoner Wine Company. So some household names for sure.
Yep, I've definitely heard some of those.
Good. And specifically in my role, I sit within the Wine and Spirits division as Director and Head of Growth for DTC, which is a new business unit we launched probably just about a year ago now, focused on building new digital commerce capabilities for direct-to-consumer selling, so fulfilling directly from our wineries and distilleries to the consumer at home, to their door. And in my role, I oversee a handful of functions ranging from e-commerce product management, so UX design and website development, customer acquisition, marketing, retention and loyalty programs, email marketing, business intelligence and analytics, and some strategy work as well.
And is that all you do? It sounds like you're pretty much running the company at this point.
Yep, that's just it.
Well, let's launch our first poll for the audience here. I would love to see, what is your favorite Constellation brand product? So as that poll is going live, I'll throw this back to you. What is your favorite Constellation brand product?
So that depends. I think if I'm in the mood for a beer, it has to be a Corona or a Pacifico. I'm a big fan of those too. But for me, I tend to gravitate towards the wines a little bit more. So I have to say I'm a fan of Robert Mondavi Winery out west.
Nice.
So those are two of my choices.
So tell me, how are the happy hours? I mean, they've got to be wild, right?
They are exquisite. We've done a handful of those, albeit virtually, over the past year or so. But we ship product to everyone at home, and we do our best. But the product selection is definitely a step above for sure.
That's great. I'll have to see how I can get some free samples after this today. All right. So the final results are in. Looks like Corona is one of the audience's favorite. Interesting choice after this year, folks.
No surprise there. I do see High West Whiskey as well.
Oh, one of my favorites. Okay. So let's dive into some questions. The retail industry has seen a lot of changes over the past year. How have these changes affected Constellation Brands, and how has it changed how you think about data?
Yeah, for sure. Well, for starters, we launched this new business unit for direct-to-consumer, and we put a really big emphasis on growing what was already there for us. And we've accelerated that quite a bit to keep up with consumer trends. So we're focused on direct-to-consumer. We're trying to build that capability through digital commerce, fulfillment, marketing, website design. So we're focusing a lot on that to keep up with the changing pace. And along with that, of course, as you can imagine, immense amounts of data. So collecting all of our first-party data from our customers, running analytics on that, and it's enabling us to speak to our consumers in a one-to-one manner, whereas before we weren't really able to do that. We didn't have the tools in our toolkit to do that. So that's probably a big focus for us is the data. The business unit itself was designed not only for revenue generation and margin accretive sales growth, which it will deliver over time, but moreover, it's really focused on providing insights and data to our business to service all of the other channels as well, including wholesale. So we're really an insights generation business unit. At the same time, we're trying to drive revenue and sales.
That's great. I mean, it's always really good to hear companies that are, making these data-driven decisions and kind of leaning into that.
Yep.
So as you navigated the shift towards direct-to-consumer, what kinds of questions did the business find itself trying to answer, and how did you specifically use data to address these questions?
Yeah, so I think the question for us was, how far do we go? There's a lot of companies out there, of course, in the direct-to-consumer startup world that are, of course, 100% direct-to-consumer. And then you have your omni-channel equivalents of large firms like us trying to enter the direct-to-consumer space to compete with the consumer mindset today. And so for us, is what is the right balance to strike? What revenue mix are we looking for? And we benchmarked ourselves against a number of different peers inside the space and outside the space. And I think, for example, just to draw a comparison to two other consumer firms that have publicly announced some of their ambitions in the space, I think Nike and Adidas are both north of 25%, even approaching 50% direct-to-consumer sales today, which is really high. I won't say that we'll reach 50% anytime soon, but we're certainly trying. So we're going to grow that channel for us and make sure that it's providing the right amount of revenue and the right amount of insight and data so that we can collect information on our consumers. So that was the question, and we answered that with a number of external data sources like research, like I just mentioned. But I think more importantly, we're starting to look inward now that we have all of that data in our system. So we've built this business unit, we've built the analytics engine, we've built the technology stack, we have customers, thankfully, coming to the website and purchasing. So now we kind of understand where the needs are, where we over-index in terms of demographics and locations. So it's been a really fun exercise in developing kind of, how far do we go and what the right mix is. And that's the biggest question for us.
Yeah, it sounds like you guys have quite the bit of like a rich data set to really tap into.
We do. And for the first time, really, we're able to speak to our consumers in a one-to-one manner. As you can imagine before, the value chain is a little bit separate when you talk about wholesale. A consumer would go to a liquor store or to a bar and purchase and have a great experience with what's in the bottle. But now we're also able to, with our websites and with our fulfillment capabilities for DTC, we're able to kind of control that whole experience from start to finish and hopefully retain them throughout the life of their consumption journey.
Wow, so you can really use data to really drive like customer value, right, and customer service.
Absolutely, yeah. We're looking at things like customer lifetime value, how much does it cost to acquire a customer, net promoter score measurements. So a lot of things that we haven't been doing in the past that we're enabling, starting with DTC, but expanding outward to the larger company.
Yep, wow. So we've seen a really fast shift to direct-to-consumer models over the course of the pandemic. Do you think this acceleration is going to continue? And what do you think is next for the industry, and how can retailers be preparing for future shifts in the industry?
So I think it's definitely going to continue. I think it's here to stay. There's a famous quote out there that I read that in 3 months we saw 10 years of growth for e-commerce, which I think rings true. We were pretty nimble in reacting to that. And adapting to the new consumer mindset of being there where they are, which is at home consuming content digitally. And so over the past year or so, as we started to get year-over-year comparisons to when the pandemic started to where we are now, we're actually seeing a lot of the trends that have accelerated are actually staying at levels where they were before. So I'm a believer. I think it's here to stay. I'm not quite sure how long or what the shift will look like over the next couple of years, but I think kind of that DTC statement has been made. To answer your question about looking into the future, now that we've kind of built this capability, we're able to ship directly to consumers in a lot of states in the US. We are looking after what I will call the get it now economy, which is, I think, every consumer is familiar with that because they order something and they expect it to be at their door same day or the day after or 2 days after. So we're grappling with that and we're kind of in the battle for the last mile is how I will put it. So I think that's something we'll have our eye on for the next couple of weeks and years.
Yeah, I would have to say I'm one of those consumers that immediately order something and thinks it should be on my doorstep right away.
Me too.
So question for you, what advice do you have for retailers and brands thinking about how to prepare for big industry shifts in the future? And before you answer that, I'd really like to open it up to our audience. What advice would you give retailers? You can comment directly in the chat to go through and see that. So what do you think?
Yeah, I think for me it's about staying nimble with the choices you make from a technology standpoint, and we've done that. We've assembled a really modular technology stack that's able to be added to and subtracted from to make sure that we're able to respond to consumer needs as soon as we have the insight. So my advice would be to stay as nimble as possible. It sounds a bit cliche, but stay as nimble as possible with technology choices. Make sure it's modular, additive, and incremental, and don't get too sticky with one thing because at the end of the day, consumer behavior shifts can happen very quickly like we've seen. And the consumer doesn't really care what you do behind the scenes. They care about what the product is. And so as long as you have the right tools behind the scenes to deliver the best product and experience to the consumer, whether that's on-premise for us or direct-to-consumer shipped to your door, whatever it is, make sure you have the right assembly of technology to make that decision and stay ahead of it.
Yeah, I think that's great. There's been really a shift from, just having one legacy product that's just supposed to do everything, right? And then moving more to best in breed of the stack of like making sure whatever component that you need within that tech stack is really working for you and your business.
Yeah, absolutely. And we've done a lot of research and a lot of competitive analysis in building our tech stack. And a big focus for us was our data warehousing, which is probably the most important for us as a business unit to mine that data from so many different sources, as you can imagine, right? Coming from the first time an ad is shown to a consumer on a digital platform, to when they visit our website, to when they buy a product and then hopefully buy again. And then we send them a survey about Net Promoter Score. So collecting all of that information, even with fulfillment data, logistics partners, there's a ton of commercial activities out there, and we wanted to centralize that and store that in the right way. And we're using Google BigQuery for that purpose today. And it's really important to have kind of that hub and spoke model where we can have the right data in the right place to act on it accordingly.
Yeah, that's awesome to hear, especially with like centralizing that data. You can start to blend different data sources together, maybe see how did your marketing affect your sales data and so on and so forth, and kind of centralizing that in BigQuery is really the first step you need to go through and do that type of analysis.
Exactly, yeah.
So let's launch another poll. I'm curious to hear in the audience, have you used any of these technologies? So while that poll is kind of going out, I'd love to hear, how does Constellation Brands Data Stack help the business stay on the front of the innovation curve?
So great question. For us, it's about answering the right questions. It's about the ability to answer those questions first and foremost, which is easier said than done. And for us, it's about finding insights and then generating actions off of the insights. And I'll try to bring that to life with an example. Like for example, today with our tech stack, we're using BigQuery, and on top of that, we're using Looker to help us conduct business intelligence and visualizations. We're able to answer questions like, what is the age and gender mix of my customer base in the city of Los Angeles over the past 6 months for this particular brand? And what SKUs did they purchase? How many of them? What was the average cart size? And to do kind of like a cause and effect, after we introduced this type of shipping expectation in that market, did the Net Promoter Score go up or down? So we can be as granular as that, or as broad as the consumer shifting nationally, like what are taste profiles looking like in the summer versus the winter, right? So we can see all of that data in real time as an e-commerce business unit. Purchases happen every minute of every day, and we're collecting all that in real time and answering questions like that. So it's been really important for us to stay at the vanguard of that, to be able to answer questions and then respond. And if we see a particular trend gaining momentum, we will then put our heads together and work with our production teams to either produce a new product that consumers want more of, or supply the same product that they're buying over and over again.
Yep, that makes sense. It's like, why is Alex buying so much High West whiskey in Denver, Colorado?
Exactly.
That's great. So let's see what the result of our survey is. Looks like a ton of you out there are using Shopify and BigQuery. Really fascinating. Well, Ryan, thank you for a very engaging discussion.
Thank you.
So it was great to hear how Looker helped Constellation Brands navigate their data and analytics and inform strategic decisions. Now, I'd like to show you the power of the Looker platform using the results of the survey you filled out at the beginning of the session. So let's jump into Looker. What we're looking at here is a dashboard that has been built in Looker, the visualization and business intelligence that we're stacking on top of any SQL-compliant database, in this case on top of BigQuery. So we're looking at the Retail and Consumer Goods Summit data. First, what I want to showcase is just what is the demographics of the audience that are logging in and kind of viewing this session. So if we start here on the left, we're looking at region. And what I can see is the majority of folks are logging in from the West. We have some from Northeast and even some really night owls out there in Europe that are watching this right now. In terms of the position, so what's kind of the distribution and where are you guys working within your company? Large majority of folks are coming in from the data and analytics space. I can see marketing also makes up a share of the different positions, but we also have some representation with our executive, store operations, supply chain logistics, merchandising, and even some design folks out there. So scrolling down further, still just trying to understand really the demographic of the audience today watching this live, we're going to see the breakdown of industry segment by company size. So there's a lot of folks coming in from our grocery segment as well as our consumer and packaged goods. Now, in terms of how that breaks down by the company size, I can see for software, digital production, that's over 2,000 plus employees, as well as CPG as well. But we do have companies ranging from 100 to 500 employees there in our grocery, as well as our e-commerce pure play. So it's good to understand really who are your peers that are watching alongside you. But now let's understand what are the retail insights that we can glean from what you guys answered there within that form. So if I scroll down, we're going to focus first on our technology change. So what is the technology change that really think is going to be driving more impactful businesses out there? So we're winning with our frictionless checkout. And I think that makes sense. As we're kind of going through in the pandemic world, we're checking out, we want it to be quick, maybe more self-service. So I think frictionless checkout really does make a lot of sense. Following that, we have micro-fulfillment and immersive experiences. So these are the technology changes that your peers are leaning into to go through and drive their business. Now let's focus on the accelerating trends by industry segment. So for the people within your industry segment, what are those accelerating trends? So if I look at our shift to value for money, that's coming in from our specialty and department retail segment, loyalty shock with our consumer packaged goods. It's kind of interesting there. Now, if we look at the other three accelerating trends, shift to online and digital purchasing, flexibility of labor, as well as healthy, safe, and local, there's a really even breakdown between the different industries that are leaning into those accelerating trends. Finally, if we scroll down here, what we're going to see are, what do you believe consumers are now looking more for when purchasing? The three answers available are availability, convenience, and value. And it's really easy to see that convenience is winning out. But on top of that, we'd like to see, how does the answers break apart by the different regions that are watching this? So I can see here in the West, they're really leaning into the convenience that consumers are looking for. It looks like availability is broken down pretty evenly, as well as value. So what we've done here is we've taken a Looker dashboard that's been built, and utilizing the data that you guys provided there within that form, we were able to understand a little bit of the retail insights here. Now in Looker, it's great to consume dashboards, but what if we want to ask our own questions of the data? And so that's where we lean into our self-service capability with our Explore environment. So Explore environment is really neat because what it's going to do, it's going to open data access for everybody within your organization. No longer does someone have to rely on a data engineering team to go through and query the database for them to get those answers. What they can do is they can use this Explore environment to ask those questions on their own. So if I scroll down, what we have here on the left is almost like our data dictionary. It's our field picker. It allows us to choose the fields that we want to go through and do our analysis on. So in this case, I can see these are just the different answers that we had to our questions. And one thing that I want to investigate are, what are the critical areas that retailers are really focusing on? So I can choose my retailer critical areas, and that is adding that here to my resulting data set. However, I want to understand the number of responses that we got to that. So really, what answer won out? In that case, I can choose count, so we can get a count of the responses available. Looker also allows you the ability to filter the data. So just in case there was any, say like blank responses, I can choose my filter by field here. And then easily here in the UI, I'm just going to choose, give me information that is not blank. At this point, we'll go through and run our results. I'll make sure that we'll just click run here. And now what we're going to get back is the resulting data set. I can see this pulled from cache, so I might want to refresh our cache and get those fresh answers that are there within the form. So we're loading our data. Now we can get the resulting data set. And it seems like digital capabilities is really winning out amongst the audience. Now it's great to kind of go through and understand our responses here, but to make it easier for our business stakeholders, we can visualize that data. So I can now see here with my bar chart that I'm showing my digital capabilities is winning out, and I can get that analysis really quickly with the visualizations available. Within Looker, we do have a variety of visualization options you can choose from. We could go through and choose something like a table chart, and as I click through, it's just going to go and update what we want. In this case, a pie chart might be really actionable and easy for us to get those insights on. In this case, I can see that our digital capabilities is winning out. 45% of the audience is thinking that is a critical area for retailers to investigate into, whereas our operating model is really only representing 26% of the pie. So to cover a little bit, just kind of go back and wrap up our demo here. What did we do? We looked at a dashboard that was built in Looker on top of BigQuery as a data warehouse solution. We took the data from the form, piped it into that BigQuery database, and then we were able to visualize that data there within Looker. We got a breakdown of the different demographic of the audience out there, as well as understanding some of the retail and insights available. Now, if I didn't get all of my answers solved utilizing a dashboard, that's when we can jump into Looker's Explore environment, where I can self-service on my own without having to know SQL or have any other technical capabilities and answer any of the questions that I find valuable for me. All right, so let's switch gears now. What we want is kind of to ask questions or get questions from the audience. So I'd like you guys to ask any questions for Ryan and myself directly here within the chat. So as those questions are coming in, kind of question for you, I'm curious what in particular in the data stack that we talked about that Constellation Brands is leaning into.
Yeah, for sure. So we're leaning quite heavily into pretty much everything you just demoed there. We are using BigQuery to store all of the data, as I mentioned before. We run our e-commerce properties, and the back end of that is on Shopify Plus. A lot of that data is flowing into BigQuery, in addition to all of the other consumer and commercial data sources that we've got at our fingertips. We're able to store that in real time, and as you mentioned, query that in real time with Looker, with actually no real SQL language needed. While our analytics team that is on our DTC team is able to do that and curate dashboards for us, the business users and stakeholders and executive management don't really need to do that. They can have reports sent to them in real time. We can go in there, hands on keyboards, and build reports like you just did there. So we're really leaning into what we would, I guess, call data literacy across the organization, which is really important for us because we need to have everyone have the right information in order to make the right decisions for the business.
Yep, that makes sense. All right, another question coming in. What teams within an organization are serviced by Looker? Actually, I'm going to throw this back to you. I'm kind of curious what you guys are doing within Constellation Brands.
Yeah, so short answer is basically every team is using Looker. So we've built it such that we've got our center of excellence, which is our analytics team, and we can, as I mentioned before, curate any number of reports for any number of stakeholders, internal, external partners, mainly for everyday views of how the business is doing, how are we hitting our numbers, what's our net promoter score, what's our lifetime value, what is the trend. So all of those are kind of table stakes for us, and then we go a layer deeper. We can have our growth analysts go in and actually create new reports based on those reports by using the Explore function. And again, without having the need to be formally trained in SQL, it's very easy. It's plug and play. It's web-based. So basically every function on our team is using this, from finance for reporting all the way through to our customer acquisition marketing manager who looks at metrics like site visits and conversion rates, to our loyalty and retention manager, and her team is looking through all sorts of things like churn, email open rates, average order value, and things like that. So short answer and long answer, but everyone on the team uses it.
Yeah, I think that's pretty reflective of what I've seen my customers do as well. Really, anybody can use Looker, anybody can access that, and honestly, any industry can as well. We have healthcare clients, we have e-commerce clients, so it really spans the question because I do believe that any company can use data to drive decisions. Awesome. Okay, another question coming in. Are the results from Looker real time? Really excellent question. I think what we've seen in the legacy space is that you always have to extract your data out or cube it out, right? What that gives you is stale data. Looker is going to turn this a little bit on its head. Because we do connect directly into that database, we do get results that are as real time as it exists in the database. So you can make some really critical business decisions based off of that real time data. Awesome. Okay. Here's a question for you, Ryan. What's the most exciting tech for you in the commerce space? Machine learning, data, AR?
It's a great question. I think for commerce, it's got to be data. For us, that's the most important resource we have as a business, and we have so much of it compared to some other businesses that are largely wholesale oriented. We have so much data from our consumer segment in DTC that we can use that data to benefit our wholesale channel or to benefit our off-premise or on-premise consumption patterns, insights, and everything like that. On top of that, we're able to use the data for our own purposes and issue new products to consumers or issue more of the same product. So for me, tools like BigQuery and Looker are extremely important if you have a rich database of first-party data, which we do now with our DTC capabilities. And I think to expand on that, not only does it help our business unit, it can help Constellation Brands in general look at consumption patterns on a real-time basis because our e-commerce capabilities, our orders are rolling in by the minute, right? So we can see how many people are purchasing this SKU versus that SKU, and in which part of the country do they live, and are those profiles changing? What does the taste profile look like on the West versus the East Coast? So there's so many different things we can do, and all of that data is coming through our own system, so we don't have to pay a research partner to do it for us, right? So we can be both a commercial center and a research center inside of a Constellation Brands as a larger company.
Yep, that makes sense. Awesome. So let's just take one last question here. What are the challenges you face with your D2B consumers as a result of introducing D2C for Constellation Brands?
Yeah, so we do have a bit of channel conflict going on, of course, as any omni-channel business would. We are, as I mentioned before, focused on DTC as not just a revenue-driving channel to the consumer, but also an insights-generating channel for our other lines of business, which, of course, are wholesale and other channels. We're very reliant on distribution partners. We've got a great partner that does that for us here in North America. We can provide them insights. We can share insights. I don't think our DTC business in terms of revenue mix will ever surpass the business that we do in wholesale, for example. That's just how people consume beer, wine, and liquor is somewhere else and on-premise by our liquor store. But the data we collect and the customer experience that we can foster through these experiences and in a well-curated website with the right experience, with a really nice delivery experience and unboxing experience, and we can really create a rich story and connection with the consumer. Whereas in a bar or restaurant or at a liquor store, we're only really responsible for what's in the bottle, whereas now we can be responsible for the whole story, which I think benefits the company at large. So I think, again, to echo my point, we're an innovation and research center kind of sitting within a larger sales channel.
Yeah. Well, looks like we're out of time. Thanks again for joining, Ryan.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Really appreciate that. And thanks for our audience and those folks at home for attending the Retail and Consumer Goods Summit. If you're interested in learning more about Looker, you can request a demo at looker.com. Cheers.